As you know, that private sector is extremely critical in matters devolution, and that's why we feel that it is really relevant for us to discuss matters where private sector can really help in accelerating county transformation and development of our country. Allow me to recognize the presence of the very many leaders, our chairman, Jasbedi, John Mwendoa, the CEO Can Invest, host of other government and county officials, Deputy County Governor, Kilifi County, Flora, the CC, Ebu County Trade. We want to recognize you and acknowledge your presence, and many other hosts and dignitaries who are with us here this evening. So we want to begin, and the beauty of having this panel at this time is because we will definitely have an opportunity to deep dive into deeper issues on how the private sector can move investments, unlock potential of our counties in a very exciting way. The first section of this event will look into how we can be able to work collaboratively together to look at opportunities that do exist for counties to work with private sector and also with the government ecosystems at large to accelerate the transformation. We are aware that as a country, significant progress has been done on economic front. We see our GDP growing. We see, inflation coming down. We see transformation happening around fiscal policies. The challenge has always been that the macroeconomic impact do not really get felt on the ground. And the idea here is the fact that if we leverage on the county opportunities that are there, that can become the bridge for which we can be able to bridge the growth, the economic growth that we see at the national level, as well as the common Mwananchi. And therefore, this session today is really going to dive into two areas. One of it is look at a trade and investment, where we have a very powerful critical panel that's going to be looking and to be helping us unpack that. And the second section will be asking, yes, after we do that, what are the real impacts and what are the outcomes of that? And of course, as we all aware that youth employment is extremely important and it's a priority for everyone. And so the county governments, the national government, the development actors present, the private sector has a stake and must double down their efforts to make sure that we are unlocking employment opportunities for young people. And so in the second panel, with the support of our partner Immobilis, we'll be looking at how can digital transformation also accelerate job creation in the county, help value chains to digitize and become more productive, to increase yield for farmers, increase innovation, but also create transformation where jobs can be created at scale. And so we really look forward to very exciting discussions. And I want to once again welcome all of you to this session. And I believe that by the end of this session, we will have key takeaways, actionable points, case studies that will learn from each other on how to be better and how to really use the platforms that we have at our hand to create opportunities for our people. And so without further ado, allow me to kick off by inviting our first speaker. And our first speaker comes from KAS. And KAS is one of the partners who have worked together with us as well as the other partners present here to put together this breakout session to be able to give a status note on how private sector investment opportunities can be unlocked to facilitate commerce in the counties. And then we'll go straight to the first panel. So Dr. Owen, kindly come forward so that you can make your presentation.
So I want to make a presentation on how we can use our counties to support commerce. Businesses and counties should coexist. So that's the main idea. So what I want to do is to present issues that will unite us so that we can open up the debate. Okay. So the first thing is, how do we enhance growth through a conducive business environment at the county level? So there are certain items that we need to focus on. The first is we need to create a conducive business environment. And that can happen through the support of counties. Counties play a major role in ensuring that this takes place. One of the issues is that if we can promote economic viability in counties and opportunities, then we create an environment for businesses to thrive. And the main thing is we create enabling framework for commerce to flourish. The second is in the role of enabling commerce. And that is through the services offered by counties. So the idea is that counties should offer the infrastructure support. When we talk about infrastructure, we first look at the soft infrastructure. Counties are the core through which they create laws and regulations that support businesses. If you want to open up a business in a county, you have to register. So the process should be smooth enough so to be able to support counties. So the laws and regulations that govern business entities should be equitable and predictable, such that they do not create any uncertainty in the business environment. That's the only way you can be able to attract investment and spur economic activity. Another thing is that we know that counties are independent, politically and legally. But then, other than being independent, they need to be collaborate because social and economically they're interlinked. So that means that if you're creating a framework for business in one county, they should be able to be coordinated across several counties so that they can be mutually supporting each other in terms of ensuring growth and development. And the role of counties given by the Constitution of Kenya 2010, which grants them legal authority and a mandate to carry out certain functions. So this effective collaboration across counties ensures harmonization of policies and laws to enable effective flow of businesses and service delivery. Another is that counties are catalysts for development. This is through the enhancement of business environment, because this can unlock the full potential of counties in terms of foreign services and enable businesses to thrive. So if this happens, then if you're focusing on growing a given county, generally or aggregately will be supporting the entire country. But then what are the challenges that impact business environment at the county? So we have already noted that counties are important to spur economic activity, but there are certain challenges which come out. And if these challenges are addressed, they can be able to support businesses to thrive. And one of the critical issues is fostering a conducive ecosystem for commerce and investment. So some of the key challenges, we've just picked out a few of them. First is the frequent tax policy changes. Each year, financial year, counties pass laws. They're supposed to be raising revenues, on-source revenue. But then these frequent changes in laws create uncertainty in the business environment. So this uncertainty increases business risks so that business cannot be able to plan ahead. The second is the complex licensing frameworks. There are certain counties where the licensing framework is not simplified. So this is not all the cases, but there are certain counties where licensing framework is not simplified. So that means businesses do not know which kind of process they need to follow so that they can be able to register their businesses, or the process they need to follow to carry out commerce. So this creates significant barriers and operations. And the problem is this is it creates a situation where additional costs for business operations due to compliance costs. Then the next item is inter-county fees and levies. So this is where in each county, if you're doing commerce across the counties, in each county there are fees which have to be met. For instance, if you're doing transport business, assume you're supplying markets. So whenever a transport vehicle reaches the border of each country, there are certain cess they pay. So this creates in a lot of bureaucracy within the system. So one of the things that is necessary is to try to harmonize this kind of levies so that business can be able to reduce the cost of moving goods across counties. Then accumulated payment arrears. We know that there's been arrears has been a problem within the counties and even the national government. But then this has an effect on businesses. The moment you supply goods and services to counties, then you expect payment within a given favorable period of time, as per the contract. But any overdue payments and penalties creates liquidity challenges for firms. That means they affect the working capital and viability of business in terms of expansion. So this heightens business risks and impair ability of enterprise to meet financial obligations. The next one is unsupportive infrastructure. So the infrastructure may be there, but it's not enabling to support businesses. So you have roads which maybe during rainy seasons they are run down, so you cannot support your produce or pass across that road. So, or unreliable water supply or sewer systems. So this reduces inefficiency and increases business costs because it creates delays in the system and a supply chain framework. Okay, the next, please. So given this, what strategies are there to create an conducive environment for businesses? So these are some of the options that counties can consider to be able to facilitate businesses to operate. One is establishing predictable and stable taxation measures. So this is where we have consistent taxation policies with minimal challenges and then the fees are scientifically determined. And one of the things that has taken place is the initiative by the Commission for Revenue Allocation to come up with a scientific way of coming with setting revenues. So this can be assist businesses so that they can be able to know exactly what costs they are going to incur if they're supposed to carry out a given business, because the rates will be standardized across the counties. Another is harmonization of regulatory and taxation frameworks. So if we can be able to harmonize regulatory framework across counties, this will reduce duplication and also reduce compliance costs. So the benefit of this is that there'll be seamless inter-county trade for cohesive economic environment. So that if you're in county A and you're moving goods to county B, there'll be no problem in terms of operation. The third item is enhancing transparency and predictability in county processes. So the processes should be predictable, so that if you're a business, you know this is what expected of me in terms of legal requirements, regulatory requirement, licensing, and everything else. So what this does is to reduce rent seeking, where we expect some bottlenecks in the system, and you have to say pay something so that you go through the system. And also streamlines business interactions with county authority to foster efficient business environment. And improving county infrastructure. So this involves both the physical infrastructure and the soft infrastructure. So if we can improve road networks, sewage system, and digital systems, for instance, the business operation costs will go down. And this will enhance market or expand market and resource success and drive economic growth. Okay. The next, please. The fifth is developing local and regional value chains. Now, there can be a situation where you are in county A, but you need resources from county B to be able to produce. So that means the cost of getting supplies are likely to be high. So what we need to do is to develop the local and regional value chains, because if we do this, then we can be able to reduce the cost of operations. Because we reduce reliance on external supply chains and lower production distribution costs. And this enhances business competitiveness, because if the costs are high, then competitiveness of businesses also remains lower. And then the last one is addressing pending bills. So this has been an issue, and we believe that if these are resolved within adequate time, then they can be able to foster business operations. So what counties can do is to try to prioritize budget allocations and enforcing strict payment timelines in supplier contracts, because this will improve liquidity and reduce financial risks. Next, please. So let me just look at a few impacts of pending bills on businesses. The first impact is that it affects liquidity of firms and cash flow. It leads to cash flow constraints. So the moment you supply goods, say you are financed by a bank, and you are not able to get this money back, then it limits the liquidity of the business. So you cannot be able to carry out additional investment, even if the opportunities are there, because you're limited of cash. So this restricts cash flow essentially for day-to-day operations and may hamper critical activities such as staff training, expansion, and the rest. Another is impaired access to working capital. So the moment working capital reduces due to delayed payment, then it increases the risk of financial distress and potential closure. And this affects mainly small and micro enterprises who have constraints in terms of accessing capital. For instance, from the MSC Tracker survey, 42% of MSMEs cite lack of working capital as the primary reason for business closures. So that shows you that a higher percentage of these businesses are closing down just because of arrears which they are owed after supplying certain goods and services. Another is rising non-performing loans. So when unpaid bills accumulate, then businesses that were financed through credit default on their loans. So this increases non-performing loans and affects the banking sector. For instance, 28% of MSME, micro, small, and medium enterprises loan accounts were non-performing as of December 2024. So this reflects heightened financial risk both for the businesses and for the financial sector as well. Next, please. And next is increased cost of credit. The moment non-performing loans rises or you default on your credit, then you are rated as a risky borrower. But remember, the problem comes from somewhere else because you have not received your payment. So that means when you go to the credit market, it will be ranked as a riskier borrower. So you have to pay more in terms of the cost of credit. That is at best. At worst, you'll not be able to access any loans, because the moment you default for a given period of time, you'll be listed as under the CBR. So that means you cannot be able to acquire loans to support your businesses. So this elevates borrowing costs and further strains financial resources. And then the last is limited participation in government procurement. You don't have resources, you cannot tender for more jobs. So that means as a business, instead of growing, you grow negatively. That means you shrink. And this can lead to job losses and create problems in the economy. Okay, so next, please. So the next few slides just to show trends of government pending bills. I'll not go into details because of time, but just this shows what is happening. So we have pending bills from national government and from the counties. But if you compare national government and counties, the national government accounts for almost 70% of pending bills over the period. Okay, and this mainly to support for finance deficit because this is through domestic arrears. Next. Then most of the national government pending bills are for state corporations and government agencies. Over 80%, most of it. The ministries, departments, and agencies constitute about 20 to 30% of the pending bills. Next, please. In terms of the expenditure type, we have development and recurrent expenditure. So most of the pending bills of the national government are for the development expenditure. Okay, you'll see that in counties, this is the reverse. And this is only for the entire period except for quarter 1 and quarter 2 of 2022-23 and quarter 2 of 2023-24. Next. For the county government, most of the pending bills are from the county executive, not from the assemblies. Next, please. And then out of this, 80% of the pending bills of the county government in each quarter are for recurrent expenditure. So it's the opposite of what we saw under the national government. For national government are for development, mainly from financing of projects and the rest. For counties, they're mainly from the recurrent expenditure. So if each of the 42 counties was to build or work on supporting the business environment, then within the entire country will be having a favorable investment climate for businesses. And this will not only support the domestic businesses, but also attract foreign investment. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. As you get me the other cordless one, I think we can get started. And maybe we can start with you, Owen. Pending bills seems to be a very, very huge problem among not only cutting across both national and subnational levels. And I know you interrogated it with a bit more scientific method, but what's your general opinion about exactly what you have just presented to us?
Pending bills is let me say it's something which has been in the system for long. It preceded the devolution. So most of these things started before the devolution time. But what it essentially means is that you are supporting other entities on credit. But remember, pending bills not only limited to government. There can also be business-to-business pending bills, overpaid arrears. But the main issue is that on the commercial side, there are processes through which this can be solved. However, when you're dealing with government, then there's an issue. One of the things that has been done in other countries is to come up with a fund to support this so that you can be able to address the arrears. Okay, so it's still another way of borrowing, which can also lead to fiscal issues. But if you've done well, then that can reduce this. Second is what has been proposed in the locally is to have an allocation each budget year towards addressing or reducing the pending bills. So that means you address what has accumulated, but on the supplies that are happening immediately, you make sure you clear them in time. But then the systemic issue is the non-adherence to Public Finance Act and Public Procurement and Disposal Act. Because essentially, if you are budgeted for a project, there must be funds set aside for that. So it means you only start a project if you already have funds. So this is where this has been a failure. But I believe the government has been doing something. Recently, there was something which was being discussed in the Senate. This has not gone through. A bill to address these kind of payments. Thank you.
Thank you. And I know, Mwenda, I want to jump to you because you recently did publish what you're calling a guide for how counties should be doing investment conferences. And maybe this might have been born out of the need to try and to increase the number of investments that come to the county so that the own source revenue can go higher and reduce the pending bills. Maybe you could speak briefly on the guidelines and what motivated you as a Kenya Invest, who has been working at the national level, to interest yourself enough to come to the sub-national levels.
Thank you very much. First of all, investments, when they come to Kenya, eventually they will come to a county. So we have always been at counties. We have just not started because out there it's Kenya, but in here it's county A or B or X and Y. So every investor that comes to Kenya will always want to locate in a county. So it is pivotal that we work with counties. And the guide that we recently released is meant to just raise the bar in terms of the art of attracting capital, because projects that attract investors to come to Kenya and anywhere around the world follow some certain aspects. Has it been prepared appropriately? Does it address certain elements of risk, market demand, etc.? So that when you do an investment conference, you are not doing an event just to talk. You are really showcasing aspects of a county or in a county that really can resonate with attracting capital. So that's the guideline. So our partnership with counties is there to stay. We, as a matter of fact, connect with Homa Bay, for example, through our Kisumu regional office. It is inevitable that we will work with counties for the foreseeable future as long as this country exists. So we are proud to be partners with counties, and we can only do more. That is just the beginning. All the value chains, and you heard His Excellency announce during his speech, we are also facilitating counties to package at least one bankable project to investment grade, so that when we go to them to attract these investors, it doesn't really lengthen the time it takes for a final investment decision on a project to be done. So I hope that answers it, and we are really excited to be partners with counties. Inevitably, it must be made to happen. Thank you.
What are some of the initiatives that you are undertaking to attract private sector investment in the county?
Thank you so much. Kilifi is County 003 host. And basically for us, the first thing, we established a committee of investment conference where I chair. And of course, in Kilifi, we already have existing business partners and investors. So one thing, it's really to sit them down, have a round table meeting with them, and bring them close to hear what is it that they're doing. Are there any challenges? But we are also establishing a Kilifi Investment Committee, of which and institutionalizing the Kilifi County Investment and Development Corporation. And we believe when we do that, it's going also to really help us in mainstreaming the investor engagement. And I believe each and every county has its own investment priorities. For us, our key priorities as far as investment is concerned, because of the having the longest coastline in Eastern Central Africa of around 286 kilometers. So blue economy is one of it. Renewable energy. We are looking at tourism. We're also looking at agro-processing, because we are a nut and fruit grower county with cashew, coconut, mangoes, pineapples. But actually the lessons that we really want to look at, so that for the 47 counties to ensure that they have a win-win on investment, we are looking at having clear investment pipelines. And also we are looking at fast-tracking approvals. And lastly, we are building trust. And when you are building trust, and it should be consistent, so that you have round tables with those investors. That's an aftercare.
Thank you very much. And I want to jump to Chair KEPSA. And from a national perspective, how can KEPSA and the counties collaboratively remove these obstacles that have perennially been at the national level? But as we look at subnational level and closer engagement between KEPSA and the counties, how are we able to collaboratively remove these obstacles?
Sorry, thank you very much. That's actually a very good question. I think we need to rewind this whole discussion to when did we as a country embrace county governments. And if you go back, our Constitution 2010 is the promulgation of that Constitution said that we need to be devolved, we need to enshrine that into our laws, and we need to enshrine county governments into the ecosystem of Kenya. Of course, the operationalization of that Constitution happened only in 2013 with the previous administration. And today, I think we're about 12 years old. This is the 9th Devolution Conference today in Homa Bay, a very different setting. We've had 8 before, but I don't think we've had the side events that we are having right now. This is probably the first side event that we're having alongside a Devolution Conference. That means business is now getting engaged, because this is tent 9, which is with KEPSA, and there are many other tents. So a lot of side meetings are ongoing parallel to the main conference. So what are we seeing, and what has worked and what's not worked? That's really what we've got to ask ourselves. If you look at over the last 12 years, I think initially all the counties were competing with each other, and they forgot they were part of one ecosystem called Team Kenya. And even to date, we are having, as private sector, some battle with some of them, that you brand your truck with your product made in Kisumu, and as soon as you cross into Kericho County, somebody stops you and says, I need to be paid for the branding. And you go to Nakuru County, the same thing happens. So multiplicity of these licensing, and that's where I think the counties were competing with that little revenue, and they really forgot the power of collaboration, the power of unity, the power of cooperation was far bigger than the little individual divides of competition that they had. I think we've got over that. Now we are believing, and we can see, even today the president said we're going to devolve 10 other functions into county governments, and we are seeing that there is some ownership right now, but ownership of belonging as one country, not 47 countries. And that's really been the big shift over the last 10 years. Maybe it was premature. Maybe we didn't understand the functionalities of counties, that you're just different players of the same team. It's like Harambee Stars, you're 11 players, but you're not one player. So that, I think, is changing, and it's changing rapidly. I'm very happy today that we are now thinking, how can we together? I was talking to my friend John earlier on, and he said, I've got a county handbook for all the counties. And I said, well, I did some research at Kenya Exports, and we actually mapped out every county. What is this county good for? Because if you're not good to grow cotton, why are you trying to grow cotton, for example? I'm just a wild example. And if you're only good for mangoes, so let's take the mango agenda forward. So I think the whole narrative is now changing. We are now looking at each other's strengths and saying, how do we complement each other? And yes, if you're good at growing mangoes and cashew in Kilifi, let's take that a step further. How do we add value to that cashew? How can we get more revenue out of that cashew? How can we get more jobs? And I'll give you one value chain, which it really hurts me, is the tea value chain. It's our number one export, is $1.4 billion. Kenya grows about 550 million tons of tea. And Kenya's export revenue is $1.4 billion. Sri Lanka grows 400 million tons of tea, and their export revenue is $3.5 million. Then you ask yourself the simple question, why is it that we grow 50% more than Sri Lanka and their export revenue is double than ours? Something is wrong. And when I did the YY analysis on that one value chain, I realized that Sri Lanka is just selling value-added tea. We are just selling majani chai. So why don't we move our paradigm, and why don't we do value addition, and why don't we start selling value-added tea? And I promise you that 600 million tons that we've got will generate $7 billion. It's a game changer in one value chain. $1.4 billion becomes $7 billion. Wow, what an input to our export revenue. Why can't we do that in every value chain? Why don't we stop thinking different? Most of the counties are thinking agriculture. I think we need to move out of that agriculture agenda and start calling it agri-business. Because at the end of the day, you sell the mango, you sell the coconut, but just selling a coconut is still an agriculture product. But if you move that coconut into coconut oil or coconut juice, it's a very different discussion, a very different revenue. I just want to pause there, but I wanted to challenge the audience. Start thinking big.
From where you sit right now, how is Ken Invest, how can they be able to help the counties better package and market by leveraging on already existing systems from Ken Invest point of view?
Really, what we are doing is to work with them to really prioritize. And I like what the chair of KEPSA just said, that there is already a lot of information in counties for a lot of value chains. And as we think of moving from agribusiness, which is the farming side, to value addition, which is agro-processing, etc., we just need to prioritize and pick a few And we can really be able to prepare world-class bankable investment options for projects in counties. And the challenge, Madam DG, we have normally is very tough to go to a county and tell them choose one value chain first, we start with it. Because they'll tell you we have 4 or 5. We understand. We'll not stop on the others. But if we do one well, package it, attract an investor, take it all the way to financial close, do groundbreaking, commercial operation, and then we perfect the hiccups that exist there, then you can be able to add a few more other value chains and we can make it work. So we're working very closely with counties, and for example, on the county aggregation industrial parks, we are also helping them make the industrial parks ready. How? Getting the warehouses ready is only one aspect of being investor ready. What about road and power? What about effluent treatment? What about quality of the title that the land sits on? Does it have a list that you can take to a bank and give an investor to get a facility on?
Sure.
And we aggregate all that to get an investment grade proposal for the county aggregation industrial park. We also have to make the same for some of the value chains. So we're working very closely with them. It's early days, but it's going to get better. And this is happening just after 2010. You can imagine where it will be by 2035. I think the story will be different.
Absolutely.
And these teething issues on understanding what investments are will be good. And then finally, finally, just a small example. We are also now going to be conducting an investment masterclass for all counties, especially folks in, investment and trade, CECs and the chief officers, and the county investment units, sometime in November, so that we can also lift everybody in terms of understanding. An investment masterclass just takes you to the same level of understanding what it really takes to attract investment in a county. So that's all from me. Thank you.
I just want to add on to what John has just said. And I also just want to say that I just concluded my 2 terms as chair of Kenya Export Promotion and Branding Agency last week. And KEPSA as an organization, when I took over the chair, our exports were $6 billion. As I left last week, there's $8.3 billion. A $2.3 billion enhancement in export is unheard of. And we've been very flat at $6 billion. When we had the presidential roundtable last week with the president, I told him one stat he did not share is that from last year to this year, our exports went up by $1 billion, which is true. But the point I want to make for John is, and for the audience, is that the branding component, the packaging component, making it fit for export component is already being done in another state corporation, which is KEPSA. And very shortly, I think you guys heard there's a marriage in the air between CanInvest and KEPSA. So they are engaged to be married. We don't know the marriage date. I think they'll tell us soon. But either way, so they are a state corporation who's just doing that as a business, branding Kenya. And I give you an example. When we went last to Dubai at the Expo 2020, which was in 2021, 4 years ago, our exports of flowers to Dubai was 0. Today, our exports of flowers to Dubai is $42 million. And what did we do differently? We gave away 250,000 flowers, roses, free of charge. You must have seen that double-decker bus giving free roses in Dubai. Maybe the Arabs were not that romantic before. Maybe they are now. But we have secured a marketplace for roses, fresh-cut flowers into UAE. And similarly, as we speak right now, we're within a 6 months expo in Japan at Osaka 2025. So we do the promotion, and John does the investment. So together we work. He produces, we sell. I mean, we sell meaning as at last week's cap. I think I need to stop using that cap now. But going back to the KEPSA agenda, and what are we doing and how are we doing it? We are organized with 130 BMOs. BMOs meaning business member organizations. And we have an outreach to 2 million members, and 33% of our SME contribution generates 80% of the formal employment in Kenya. So we are very connected. And even when we have the presidential roundtable, it's not KEPSA. KEPSA is just the voice of the private sector, is the umbrella body where we have Kenya Bankers as members, Kenya Association as members, Kenya Flower Council as members, so all the business member organizations. And this was created in 2003 by President Kibaki when he said, you know what, I want to talk to the private sector, but I want to talk to one body. I can't have, if there are 130 business member organizations, I cannot have 130 meetings. That's half a year gone. So I think the umbrella body, and we're also the focal point for ICC, which is the International Chamber of Commerce, which is a global institution, and we're also the focal point for the East African Business Council, and East Africa is one of the biggest markets, as you know.
Thank you.
So yes, we do connect people, and that's why we're here today, trying to connect people, trying to connect the dots, and getting the business running.
What are some of the low-hanging fruits that counties who are here in this room can already start implementing from the project that you've just been commissioned to do by KEPSA? 2 or 3 quick wins.
Yeah, I think the first thing that counties should do, which is a quick win, is to prioritize the areas of competence, because that will enable them have a competitive advantage. Because if each county is producing a similar thing or focusing on a specific area, then there are several costs in terms of if you're not competitive in that area, then you're basically producing at higher cost. And for this to happen, the first thing they have to do is to focus on infrastructure. The MSME tracker survey, 74% of farms list the major issue they are stating that the non-financial support they need is infrastructure. When we talk about infrastructure, we talk about markets, we talk about roads, and we talk about all those networks. If you can do infrastructure, then the businesses will come. It will also enable these counties to the informal business to move to be formalized easily, as long as you have infrastructure. The second thing, which I think is an issue, is what is already in the room is about the pending bills. Can we try as counties to start addressing this issue? Can we formalize our payment system, procurement system, so that if it's an issue of capacity, I believe there's a system through which you can be able to train, so that we follow the PFM Act and public-private disposal, because that will help the small businesses to thrive. Thank you.
Thanks. And I want to go to the floor now. So whoever has a roaming mic, please do that. But I want to jump to the Deputy Governor of Kilifi and quickly ask some of the lessons that you've been able to learn, since the conference, and also some of the strides that you're making, especially when it comes to agro-business.
By the way, in any investment conference, when you get people coming together, that's where you learn from one another. As I had mentioned earlier, one also of the most important thing that we've really actually running with it in Kilifi is agro-processing. And you've mentioned about value addition. In Kilifi, as we are talking of cassava, fruits, nuts, we have seen how there's this transition. And we are really looking into also manufacturing. Much as you are talking about value addition, but we are talking about also manufacturing. We are just mentioning something like we have like 4 EPZs, whereby unlike people coming and bringing in materials, why don't we get raw materials ourselves and actually process and come up with these materials ourselves? We really need to talk on things that will really help us bring things together. For example, we are looking at digitalizing things such that when we are working with partners, we simplify regulatory processes. We are looking at ways in which, as counties, especially with Can Invest, bringing in the expertise in working with the trade officers, training them to ensure that there is cohesion between the partners around us.
I am from Immobilis for the Ajira Digital Program. A quick question to Evelyn Kanywa from Immobilis for the Ajira Digital Program. And it's a question related to a point that Chair KEPSA shared around value addition and why Kenya exports so much, quantity of tea compared to countries like Sri Lanka, but when you look at the export value, it is way much lesser. And this is a discussion or rather conversation that has been there from even when I was in school. Those are some of the comparisons, or rather, the comparative analysis that you would hear. And my question would be, why has this taken so much time that the leadership, that is the political leadership, even the people in the policy, case in point, KEPSA, the counties themselves, and even the farmers, or rather the business people, understand this, but it has taken so much time at the conversation phase, and it has never gone to practice. What are the barriers, and what are some of the things that can be done to unlock that, to ensure that, because this is value that would definitely benefit everyone that is in that ecosystem, then we are taking advantage of that.
I've always had struggles to say, in order for us to attract investors, first you must have land and at least an idea which you can use to knock doors. And so a bankable, say, project. Does Kenya Invest or KEPSA come in handy to help counties to develop that? Because then that is, you can prioritize to say, I'm going to do coconut, but how do you do feasibility studies that for a bankable project that you can sell to potential investors? Thank you very much.
I want to seek some guidance on issues pending bills. When we joined the government from the other regime, we found millions of pending bills. But I want to know, where is the missing link? Because the procurement system is integrated between the national government and the county. And is there no rules that can give guidance that within this time to this time, this process of the procurement cycle is closed? We only come to know when they close the payment, despite that the projects have been done, but the system closes that it is not going to pay. But the delay from the beginning of the process has no limitation. You can, for example, we are in the month of August. September is almost come, first quarter gone, no process has started totally. Why do we not have guidance that within this time and this time the system closes? Quarter two, this one. But we find almost all of us rushing towards the end of the quarter, that we are now, the end of the year, that is quarter three and quarter four. That is where we are rushing, and we find everything has gone to pending bills. The second issue is for KEPSA. I just want more of a comment. I still think that we should devolve systems from the national level. I know I participated in a KEPSA program known as Better Business for Children, where we were integrating issues of agro-processing in groups and other issues, but we never see this. I have gone to the county. I don't even see your existence so much in the county, and yet much work in the county. KEPSA will even link us with KEBS to do the logo and the branding issues, but in the county, we are just like orphans. Thank you.
Your question is very relevant and very valid, that we keep talking about it, but what has happened and why are we not translating that perceived value into real value? And I'll give you a simple example in the tea sector, because you talked about the tea sector. I don't know how many of you know the recipe of English breakfast tea. Anybody in the room? Nope. Now, English breakfast tea, there's nothing English about it. There's not even one bush in England with English breakfast tea. But all of us drink English breakfast tea. It's such a strong brand that has been created by Lipton's, Earl Grey tea, and all these British companies. And the recipe of English breakfast tea is basically the British Raj, the British Empire, wherever they grew tea. So they grew tea in Kenya, they grew tea in India, and they grew tea in Ceylon, or now called Sri Lanka. So the recipe of English breakfast tea is 1 kilo Ceylon, 1 kilo Assam, which is in India, and 1 kilo Kericho, which is in Kenya. So I talked to the owners of Lipton and I asked them, why are we so important to this recipe of this English breakfast tea? He says, you're the most important person in the room. I said, what do you mean I'm the most important person? He says, because the Kenyan component, that 33%, gives the tea aroma and color.
Yeah.
Only two properties, which the Indian and the Sri Lankan tea does not give. So we are a very important person in the room. So I asked the next question, if I'm so important, why is it that English breakfast tea is not made here and is blended in Dubai? Again, another desert, not a single bush there. The company Lipton has got huge presence in DMCC, the Commodities Exchange in Dubai. They blend their teas from 3 different countries and they label it English breakfast tea. And they say the problem is legislation in Kenya. And of course, we've taken it up with government now. Legislation means that we start thinking as a tea business being it has to be 100% value added from one region, one tea, one type. We forget that the customer is the most important person. And if the customer wants English breakfast tea and you give him Kenya breakfast tea, yeah, he might like it, but will he really want it? It's a big difference between want and like. So I think some of these laws that we have prohibit export of tea from India to Kenya or import from Sri Lanka to Kenya. But in a bonded facility, in a special economic zone where the blending could be done, it's not so much of a problem. So those are what we need to sell to our investors and saying, you're not in the jurisdiction of domestic territory Kenya, you will be in the jurisdiction of the special economic zone my sisters got in Kilifi. Bring your 2 components from Sri Lanka and India. Sisi tunaweka yetu ya Kericho, we make English breakfast tea. So it is a set up ecosystem that needs thinking through and not an emotional attachment that it has to be 100% Kenyan. We need to be customer driven or consumer driven and not supply driven. Unfortunately, we are supply driven and not demand driven. I think that answers your question. And one other question, before I give the mic on the
other one was on KEPSA's presence at county levels.
KEPSA's presence in the 47 counties. I think I already explained to you that we have members who are all over the country, Kenya Association of Manufacturers, Kenya Bankers Association, Tourism, blah, blah, blah. One of our members that we also worked very closely with in the 2010 and 2012 was the chamber. So we were assuming that role has been assumed by the chamber, so we didn't want to step on their toes. But what I can tell you, the good news is that we have re-looked at ourselves and we feel that there's a void, a disconnect between the national and the county. So we have now started working with economic blocks. There are 6 economic blocks in Kenya. Like this morning when you heard the governor talked about the economic block of this region, everybody stand up. They stood up. So we as KEPSA have got now presence in 6 economic blocks. We're totally mirroring government. And if government is arranging 47, is a big number, let's be very honest. But 6 is an easier number as economic communities or economic blocks. So we are coming to the counties, but we will not come directly to the county, but we'll come to the block and then disseminate into the counties. I hope that answers the question. Thank you.
First, my brother, capital is a coward. What it means is investors always want to be certain that for the capital they deploy, they get a good return. So what really doing pre-feasibility or feasibility means is you're doing what we call project preparation. And now at Kenya Investment Authority, we are now relooking at opportunities across sectors. So today, if you come to us, you'll only find a sector director as opposed to before, because investors are in sectors. So that sector expertise is important. But once then the opportunity is identified, we are also helping a lot of people. Once it gets to pre-feasibility, we have a deal room. An investment deal room has what we call a project preparation facility, which we are working with donors, because it takes time to do a bankability proposal. It takes a bit of expertise. So we may not have infinite resources to do that. We will link you up with people who, if the project quality is good, then we can help you. And then the final thing is, remember, it takes a long time. Some of the reasons that there is actually factually there is more money today for investment projects than there are projects. The reason is only simple. The quality of projects is a problem. That's why project preparation is such a critical component. And that's why when you come to us, beyond profiling, we'll be asking you, is it bankable? And the reason sometimes it takes very long to have a concept and an operational project on the ground is because sometimes getting the money unlocked, if it's debt or equity or it's JV, etc., is because investors want to do due diligence, double check, or you say the production volume of this crop in Kilifi County, is this metric tons per year, or no, is it seasonal? If it goes down off peak, can you import from a neighboring country so that the plant doesn't run low on raw materials, etc.? That aspect is so important and it takes a bit of time. So that's why we are working on a project preparation facility to help some of them. And hence why we are saying we're only helping first on a single value chain, because the work is a lot. But if one works well, then the rest will work very well. And maybe to help on the issue of the pending bills, because I'm in government. Madam, you have raised a very, very, very important point. And the problem with a manual procurement system is that what you do as an autonomous agency and what other people do is discretionary on what you want to do. The e-government procurement that has been launched, I think, will put things to bed. You will never be able to issue a purchase order on anything when there is no money, when it's not been properly requested for. So I think naturally, pending bills will die a natural death. And you know what His Excellency has done with the road sector, for example, is to find innovating ways to pay off those bills to get contracts. But it has been a perennial problem. But I think when the story of pending bills is written in the next 24 months, it'll be slightly different. But it takes, a bit of hard work, and I am sure it will get better. But I know it's not been easy, and it's also one of the challenges identified by the first presenter on what pending bills really do to deny business an opportunity to stay alive. And we don't want to pretend mortality of businesses because of that scenario, hence that aspect. But I think I want to promise you, it's painful at the moment, but once the EGP kicks off well, I think that issue will be perennially completely finished. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
One question you have to ask yourself: why do we have a pending bill verification committee after every election year? So that means there are no records. So that means we have a manual system with no records, so nobody knows what has been supplied, what is to be paid, and the rest. So that's where the problem starts. But the laws are there. If you follow PFM and PPDA Act, it's very clear what should be happen. And that's why the director is talking about e-procurement. That would sort out this issue. But then what we need to do as counties is we need to know the projects that we need to support. It has been a historical problem because some of them were before devolution, but they have been accumulating. So that's where the problem is. So essentially means that the private sector is subsidizing government activities at the private sector cost, because that is like domestic financing of government activities. Thank you.
My name is Haroun Ngena from the Council of Governors. I'm the technical lead for trade at COG. First, I'd like to write on the protocols that have already been established. The DG, the CEO, Can Invest, Chairman KEPSA, and the entire team. I want to appreciate the discussion that is going on today. I want to appreciate what the team from Can Invest and the private sector are doing in terms of providing the various opportunities that are there. But as there is one question that I'm still asking myself. When are we going to bridge the gap between the opportunities that we have identified and now the needs of the investors? I'm thinking, and I have a proposal. I don't know, maybe it's something that Can Invest can take up with the support of Can Invest. Can we also, on the other side, just try to identify the needs of the private sector? What is it that they want in terms of the opportunities that are there in the country? I know, for instance, in a county like Kakamega, when they were trying to build KEPSA, in that site itself, there are a lot of stones. And they were asking us, what can we do with these stones? Those are opportunities that are there. You can come up with a granite factory, and see if we can crash those stones and come up with something else. So I know there are many other opportunities in other counties, which maybe for us as the counties we don't see, but the private sector offers maybe has an opinion of a different kind. So I'm thinking and asking whether there's a collaboration. Maybe the private sector and then can take lead and identify some of those opportunities where maybe the counties are not seeing. Secondly, is to the Can Invest team. I know for sometimes we may not, for instance, at the county level, we may not really be able to tell how many investors we have in a county. And I know I've been talking with the CEO and asking, can we try and see, even first, we need to know who is in our houses. How many investors do we have in County X? Who are these investors? Can we have the roundtables across the counties just to see how we can even partner or work together as a team? And even try to see how we can even embrace the PPP way of doing business or working as a government. So that is my suggestion. If CanInvest can take lead in terms of first mapping out all the investors that are there in a specific county, then now we can think about the value chains. How can we support each other, or even try and see if you can scale up some of those investment risks that are there? Thank you, Aisan.
Mine is just to ride on what my brother was talking about, the pending bills. The pending bills were based on projections of the budget, but some of our counties did not manage to reach the level of the revenue. So what happened is that there was some level of commitment of projects and other recurrents that could not be captured by the budget. And that's why my colleague was asking about how can we be able to pay such. You see now that has been factored in the next budget, which becomes a bit tricky because when the regime changes, other people have also their own priorities. That's one of the key components of the pending bills, and the current ones are based on that. And today, you and the president say most of the counties have improved. Like Embu County, we are collecting 356 million. Today, we are collecting 970 million. So you see that gap, and it was also used in the projections and also in the budget. So that's one of the factors. So to line on what I wanted to say is that I think CanInvest, one of the key things that we need to do as government is to have a one government approach. I'm very blessed by the chairperson talking about the KEPSA and the CanInvest disconnect and why we were thinking of them merging. So one of the key area of the solution to some of these things is to have a one government approach where all of us can be able to sit on the table, have one agenda that our effort and investment is towards that agenda.
In these value-added issues, the value-added chains and products, I've not had anything on nature-based solutions. We are all focusing on agroecology and everything. While if you look at the nature-based solutions, you have things like honey, value addition on moringa and things like that. Where do we place them to make sure they also benefit in terms of exportation and the like? Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Lynn Farah. I'm the Chief Officer for Trade, Kilifi County. I think mine is really just about data. Every time we meet investors, they ask about data. Like we'll tell them, oh yes, we have tuna. They'll ask us the quantity of tuna that comes through our waters. So I think with CanInvest, maybe we can bridge the gap between the county and the national government who have some of this data that is very important to the investors. So as we talk about pre-feasibility, we talk about being invested. We also need to have this data. And you see, when an investor comes to CanInvest, they may hit a roadblock and then back away. So we don't know that this investor has come and the reason that they've backed away. So we need to really establish a more collaborative approach with CanInvest, KEPSA, to find a way that we can now make the counties really investor ready as we want to do. Thank you.
From my brother from COG on the county roundtables, we have tried. We were in Laikipia last week. We were in Nakuru on Friday. It takes a lot of work, but we have been across a number of counties and we'll really work on it. But the change, there's a bit of a challenge, and I want to link up on your question on knowing where the investments are and the project matchmaking and what the good lady from Kilifi has just asked. If you are to just draw a graph, just assume you write county number 1 to county number 47 and look at how investments are spread. And you can take a sector like manufacturing. You'll figure out that manufacturing is in just about 5 counties: Nairobi, Murang'a, Kiambu, Kajiado, Machakos. Then it dries out completely. So there is concentration. And I want to answer the question from Vihiga that one of the reasons this one value chain per county is important is, do we all have to, in a KEPSA, do the same thing? Does every KEPSA do a project in each? You find there is mango in Makueni, you find it in Machakos. It will be a bit not convenient. So there must be an aggregator model where you decide You produce, maybe you aggregate, then you process. I'm just using that for hypothetical scenarios. But you know, when you come to the ground, mambo ni different kidogo, because everybody wants to do their part. If your volumes cannot be of commercial scale, then an investor will come and say it's a bit too small, then etc. So, but it doesn't mean you cannot find your niche. As Vihiga, for example, there must be that one thing that you can do, and then it can propel you to the future. The other point that I think Haron raised was in the one government approach, and my brother from Embu, I think our one-stop center does that. It doesn't matter which government agency, if you come to a one-stop center, we will help you. Hopefully in another, you heard the president say last week during KEPSA event, we'll make it a digital one-stop center so that you can talk to us and get support no matter where you are. And that's a good thing about digitization. I will leave harmonization of regulatory framework to Jaswinda Bedi, and then I'll come to the question of home of data. One of the aspirations we have this year is to really be the number one source of data, especially investment grade data. We will really leverage on AI and across other platforms to ensure we can really give you data that is credible. It can also shorten the discovery phase when you are doing these sort of studies, because to your point, you may find we have data on certain things, another party certain things, but when you put everybody together, everything is there. But because it is scattered everywhere, nobody has spent time to really filter it through, you really struggle. And I love what I heard DG you said about the investment committee. The investment deal room at Kenya Investment Authority today should have sight of each and every project that is at a certain stage, even if it's in a county or a national government entity. And what happens is after the deal room, we have an investment committee. So I am really glad to hear that sort of alignment at Kilifi County. And then we go to the national level, because what I cannot resolve as the chair of a technical investment committee, we escalate all the way to the National Investment Committee, chaired by the president. That model is beginning to work. Hopefully we can do better. So I want just to finalize and say there's really a lot of lessons we learn by working with counties. And that's where investments happen. In Nairobi, except for Nairobi County, we coordinate. But success will be when each county can showcase certain investments, creating impact on the ground, and we can spread the growth. I think that's the spirit of devolution.
Basically, for counties, we really want to ensure that investment works. And whatever it is, whether it's a big county or a small county, we have to put eyes on those counties. And I want to thank Ken Invest, because we had a session of experience sharing. You know, you have to tell your story as a county. When you tell your story, these guys, KEPSA, Ken Invest, will take it up and see what suits us. But basically, with that one government approach, I think for us, Kilifi County, we are looking at one-stop investment desk, in which, you know, there are some of these challenges that face counties. Challenges like bureaucratic delays, fragmented information, issues with land tenure, complexities. I think when you have one-stop shop or one-stop desk for any investor coming in, and of course, because they're the ones, they cut licenses and everything, it could be just crafted to one. And it's going to be a win-win for all of us. And I believe once we put this together, we are going to escalate as far as county governments are concerned. We were so glad today we heard how counties' on-source revenue has actually increased. And that is it. I know you mentioned something about licensing from one county to another county, because if, for example, for Coca-Cola, we have Coca-Cola in Kilifi, and you know, part of what the byproducts have to come from Nairobi. You can imagine from Nairobi all the way to Kilifi County. They pay the offloading charges every county, but once they come to our county, they show they've not paid certain thing. But what we're trying to say, some of these companies, it's important they have just one license, one cost for the whole year. It's going to Yes, because as counties, we also have a mandate to raise our own source revenue. So we really need to talk, sit down, and make sure that counties don't also suffer, much as we also want your input to ensure that we thrive. Thank you so much.
Private sector is not opposed to having a higher cess cost county to county so that it can go to the national pot and then get divided in a whichever formula you guys have. But it's so difficult for us to keep standing at the end of one border and paying that 200 shillings or 500 shillings or 1,000 shillings. It's not worth our time. We want to run a business. We want to create jobs. We can't be in, if we have that product coming to Kilifi for manufacturing, it has to stop at 5, 7 counties to get to you. It doesn't matter. If it's just one cost you pay at source or you pay on arrival, you guys share it the way you want. It's not our business. But we're finding it really frustrating that Miatano, that 2,000 shillings. The frustration and time involved is the problem. And we have no problem with the fee going up. So you can have a shared revenue mechanism. Same model like you have with your salaries. It's all shared, right? Your 400 billion or 390 billion does not come equally to all 47. There's a formula. So make a formula. Tell us what the formula is. We will sign on with you. There's no public participation. I will sign on behalf of my public. I can tell you that because that is what we want. We don't want multiplicity of licensing, time wasting. I think that answers your question. But going back to that very important question at the back, that private sector, what do you want? Yeah, it's one thing that we can showcase counties and we can say, this is what we have to offer, this is what we want to do. But has anybody asked the investor, what do you want? Very, very important question. And I said it earlier on in the tea value chain, the most important person is the customer. So we should be demand driven and not supply driven. We need to move that paradigm away from supply. And I tell you one thing, what investors in Kenya want today and what my members want is one word. And that word is competitiveness. And the reason I'm saying this is that capital will flow where money is to be made. You cannot hold capital back, no matter what you do. It will go cross-border, it will go cross-country, it will go cross-county. Because if there's money to be made across the lake on the other side of this Lake Victoria in Uganda, my money will flow there. Because I'm a businessman, I'm in the business of making money, so you can't constrain capital. So capital will flow. And capital will flow where money is to be made. So the most important thing is you need to ask, we did very well as a country, and I know John was involved in this in 2014 up to 2018, when Kenya's ease of doing business indicator, we were 136. After like 3 years, you were down to 54, right? Yeah. Consistently came down year on year on year on year. Very good, bravo, you've done really well when it comes to ease of doing business. Our focus today in 2025, we need to move away from ease and we need to start working on cost of doing business. The cost of doing business in Kenya is prohibitive. It does not allow profitability. It allows frustration. And in the process, people say, do I want to be here? I just go across the lake. I'll sell back into Kenya duty free. It's East Africa. You can't stop me, no matter what you do. So we need to start thinking differently because under the protocols that we've signed, free movement of goods, free movement of services, free movement of people. It's very simple to produce anywhere in East Africa and sell to 300 million people. 57 million is not big enough. Yes. So that's not just something, say, we're the biggest economy. Very quickly, you can become the smallest economy if we don't protect our investors. So the point I'm making is that we should look at that one word and we should look at the drivers of competitiveness. And in the strategic plan of KEPSA, 2023 to 2027, we have only one agenda. We want to improve the cost of doing business, and we want to work on those drivers of competitiveness. There are only 5 drivers, and it's part of our strategic plan. I don't want to waste time on what are the drivers. I can talk about them quickly. One is bill of materials, which is all raw materials, which we are buying at world price. It's not a problem. But the other 4 drivers we really need to work on. One is utilities, and I'm calling it utilities and not cost of power because that increases our cost of production, water, power, everything. Logistics, both inbound and outbound. It's a big cost of doing business. And do you know for every 4 containers that make their way into Kenya, 3 go back empty. So shame on us. We are importing more than we are producing. We're only exporting 1 out of the 4 we import, right? So the reverse cargo, maybe we can utilize it to our advantage. Maybe give $200 a box from Kisumu. And he said to me that night, he says, Betty, please don't talk about what we've said. Let me have a meeting with the presidential group, the parliamentary group of Kenya Kwanza government. I'll have that meeting on Monday. I'm flying tonight to Italy for the G7 meeting, and then I'm going to the Ukraine peace meeting. I said, Sawa, we didn't talk. He came back Sunday night. Monday, 17th June was a holiday, Eid holiday. It was announced by Interior Minister Kindiki at that time. So he didn't have the meeting on Monday. He had the meeting on Tuesday. And at 1 o'clock news, when Kimani Ichung'wah came on radio and said, we have agreed with the private sector. All this, right? And then same day was the march, the Gen Z march. Those kids only walked 3 or 4 kilometers when they heard the breaking news. They said, if we walked so little and so much was given to us, how much more can we ask? And all hell broke loose. June 25th, everybody knows what happened. I only wish that that news was announced on Monday. Maybe the march wouldn't have happened on Tuesday. And maybe we would have had social peace for... Anyway, that's a different discussion for a different day. But we do engage with government all the time. In this year's finance bill, I want to talk about that because that's important, 2025. There was a lot of calm compared to 24 because we engaged with the executive, with the parliamentarians, with all the committees of trade, finance, we engaged. The year before, we were only reacting. We were not proactively involved in process. That's why you saw a lot more calm this year than the previous year. So we do engage, and I take somebody's point that, do you engage? Yes, we do.
First, let me thank the CC Trade Embu. I think what you're saying is true, but what we need to do is to find a way of financing deficit at the county level. Let's not finance it through business. That's why they're breaking. Because if you don't pay bills because you've spent based on projected budgets, then that is basically private sector financing government entities. But then the one government agenda issue is important. So as a final word, I think counties need to build on the strength of other counties so that you focus on what you have an advantage on and what you cannot be able to produce, or areas where you don't have any comparative advantage, you rely on other counties. Because, for instance, when you talk about unemployment in Kenya, unemployment starts at the county level. When that SMEs closes the business, they lay off 2-3 people. So this aggregates into the entire country. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much.